Thanks. Hi, everybody, again. Good to see you all. I have to say, I'm so excited to hear Chris Wall from Ameriprise speak. He's with Wall and Associates, but we sort of made a connection through his wife, Allison Taylor, who's with Deloitte, for those of you who might know Allison. And so Chris and I have met maybe once or twice. We do have a love of FAU sports together as FAU alumni. Go Owls. So Chris, we're so excited to have you here today. Thank you for taking the time to join us and having some initial conversations with me just about trends in philanthropy and your thought process around that and your experiences. But wanted to give you guys a little bit of a background about Chris. And then I do encourage you to ask questions along the way, or you can put them in the chat and I will watch the chat, and then we'll have some Q&A when Chris is done with his presentation. But Chris has more than 20 years experience as a financial advisor, focused on retirement planning, investment management, estate planning, education planning, Christian financial strategies, and wealth preservation strategies. He is an accredited asset management specialist and portfolio management advisor, serves on numerous boards and committees, including the King's Academy, FAU Palm Beach County Alumni Network. I know there's alumni on this call, so Chris is your guy, and the National Board of the FAU Alumni Association. He is the financial advisor and managing director at Wall and Associates, and they are an advisory practice of Ameriprise Financial Services. So Chris, I will hand it over to you, and we are excited to hear what you have to say.
All right. Thanks for that great introduction. You made me sound good. I also want to start out to say thanks for letting me speak here today, but also thank you to everyone on the call for what you do for the communities in all the roles that you have. It's much appreciated, I know, by many and by myself for sure. So I talked to Michelle about maybe what you want to hear from an investment perspective as how it pertains to donor behavior and things that are going on. And I think I kind of have a unique position on that because I see it somewhat from your perspective, as I'm on several boards, as she mentioned, and investment committees for nonprofits. And then obviously I see it from the other side where I'm dealing with, individual clients that maybe have philanthropy as one of their goals, and how do we incorporate that into their financial plan or into their estate plan and utilize, the best methods to do that, to benefit them and also benefit those that they want to take care of. So kind of wanted to give you just a really brief overview of what's going on in the economy first, because that does pertain to things that you do day to day and also is going to pertain to what your donors are thinking. And then talk about hopefully some things that either maybe you didn't know about or maybe you heard before and forgot about that might be good investment related discussions to have with your constituents that are maybe already donating and maybe don't know about certain ways that they could give you additional assets, and also provide some benefits to them. So, we've been through a really weird time the last couple of years coming out of COVID, obviously with the markets, and interest rates and the economy as a whole. And I think you guys know better than others that it's impacted sometimes positively, sometimes negatively, I think, what people have done in terms of donating. Anticipation this year, the big thing that everybody is talking about is interest rates are probably going to go down. We had record interest rate increases last year, and that changed things on a lot of levels. And now the anticipation is we're kind of going to have the other side of that coin this year. So when you're looking at your own 501c3 and what you're doing with your money, last year it was very easy to make some money on cash. This year it's going to be harder, but if you're trying to borrow money, it's going to be a more beneficial position for you. So I just wanted to kind of give you that overview. I did get some statistics because Michelle said you guys like statistics, so hopefully these will be good. Several of our partner firms that we deal with do have a lot of research in the area of giving. So I pulled some different things together about, kind of investor behavior, in terms of how they like to give, what they have done recently, what they're maybe planning to do in the future as a whole, in the high net worth space, which is where obviously a lot of your donations are coming from. And one of the interesting things that I think may be of interest to you is Fidelity does a lot of research on this because they have a very large donor advised fund. And I wanted to talk about donor advised funds a little bit today too later, but 2/3 of the dollars, which is in the billions of dollars that have been contributed to these donor advised funds that then get dispersed to various charities throughout the country, 63% of the people that are donating in that method are donating unrestricted, which what I see individually a lot of times, where people, it seems to be nowadays, are more targeted on what they want to give to, and have restrictions over what they want it used for. So it does seem like still more than half the folks that are donating are saying, well, I'm going to let the charity use the money where they need it the most. So I thought that was of interest. Obviously the overreaching themes are, the larger charities get the largest sums of those money, but there's a lot of monies going to very small localized charities in a lot of cases that are important to people, whether it be a religious organization or a community organization, those types of things. Another interesting piece that I ran across that I thought would be of interest was sort of how much over time, and I don't know how much you guys have delved into this individually on your own charities as far as, the demographics of your donors. But when we're talking about people that have a good amount of investable wealth, $1 million plus, what they do with their money as they age, right? So those same folks that may have $1 million plus net worths, when they're in their 40s and 50s, charity is a part of their lifestyle and part of what they do. But that percentage is increasing exponentially as in terms of what their annual spending is as they age. And one of the things I wanted to talk about that I think could be another route for you as organizations to maybe get additional dollars from donors, especially in the South Florida market, where we have a lot of retirees, a lot of people that move here that are 70 plus, that there was a tax law change that went into effect a little over a year ago called Secure Act 2.0 that was passed by Congress. And there was a lot of hoopla about it when it passed, a year plus, and not a lot's been talked about it since. And it was basically around retirement accounts. So on the surface, it doesn't seem like that would have any impact on charity, but it had a huge impact on charity if it's utilized the right way. One of the things that the individuals can do now that they never could do before is money that they have in an individual retirement account. So someone that has money in an IRA that they've saved all their life, whether it was originally a 401k or however they accumulated that, under Secure Act 2.0, they're able to, on an annual basis, do a direct withdrawal disbursement to a charity or charities of those funds up to that $100,000 limit. And all of that money is not taxable to them. Normally, when you pull money from an IRA, you're paying tax as income as you pull it out, regardless of what you're using it for. So that is a huge thing that I don't know if your donor base knows, if they haven't, if they don't have a tax advisor that's advising them, if they don't have an investment advisor that's advising with that, they may not know that. And when someone turns 72, now 73, they're required to take money out of their IRA every year, whether they want to take money out or not. The government wants their tax dollars back. And there's a certain percentage every year that those people need to take out of their accounts, which could be used for anything, but they're forced to do it and normally pay tax on it. So under this provision, if they're already charitably inclined and donating, the best thing for them to do is designate that charity as the direct recipient of those funds, because they pay no tax on it. So just something I wanted to point out that, may have slipped through the cracks. Maybe you knew it, maybe you didn't, but I think that's a huge potential additional possibly donor base that you could get, you could get funds from some of your folks that may be already donating. Another interesting fact I ran across getting ready for this presentation was from John Hancock. They had done some research. A lot of these firms are doing a lot of research around gifting, donations, and what people are doing. 70% of adults in the US say they donate. More women than men donate, 73% to 64%. But the biggest thing is it's based on values, right? They're putting their money where their values are. So targeting those people based on that. is super important. I mentioned donor advised funds earlier. I don't know how many folks on this call have worked with a donor advised fund or understand how that operates. You all probably know people can give donations in cash, but they can also give donations of appreciated assets, whether that's stock or real estate, to charities. And some of you are probably set up to take that. Others may not be set up to take that. But a donor advised funds allows an individual to take, potentially, maybe they have shares of stock for a company they worked for years and it's appreciated a lot. They don't want to sell it and take a taxable gain that's going to increase their income that year. But if they donate that stock to a donor advised fund, they can diversify their investments, they can maintain the investments to grow, and then they can make disbursements from the fund to charities of their choice at their own discretion. And that, I think, is another key area, especially with, the type of demographic we have in South Florida. We have a lot of people that are wealthy and have the assets to do that. That if you're not either talking to people about that, whether they have those, whether they, have assets that they want to do that type of strategy with, that would also, I think, be very important. And, obviously, I know you're going to do a life insurance presentation. There's a lot of people use life insurance for the same type of strategy. But when we're talking about folks that, have wealth, are charitably inclined, there's a lot of different ways now, other than just say, hey, give us cash, to be able to get those same donations, but also really, really benefit the individual that's trying to do the donation. In terms of, investing the assets that you may have, one of the themes that we're really shifting to this year, for foundations and endowments that we manage is the same thing. Over the last year, we were very big on, keep all your money short term. Rates are going up. We're really shifting that, with all of our foundation money that we're advising, to look at, longer term strategies, because now you kind of want to lock in your interest rates on those type of vehicles. So, as rates go down, you're not going to be getting zero on your returns and things of that nature. I'm going to stop there just to see if there's any questions, because I know I just threw all kinds of things out there. And then we can continue with some other stuff if anyone's got questions on anything I brought up so far.
I have a question. Hello.
Sure.
This is very helpful information. I appreciate it. I'm
Good.
trying to take diligent notes. Question regarding the forced withdrawal, or
Yes.
when you're 73. So those funds, the direct donation to the charity isn't taxed?
Yes. So anyone that's 73 or older as of last year, 401k, IRA account, they have to, by IRS code, take a portion of, there's a calculation that we do, right, that says this much has to come out. And if they take that, right, and say, I'm taking my 10,000, my 50,000, whatever that number is, put it in their bank account and then give it to you. Yes, if they itemize their deductions, they may be able to take a deduction for part of that, right? Because it's deductible to 501c3. But if they say, we're going to send some or all of that directly to your organization from whoever the custodian is, it's 100% tax. They never pay tax on it, right?
Wow.
And it's up to $100,000 now, indexed for inflation each year is the cap. So I think that's a huge thing to kind of market to your base, because again, that law passed. There was a lot of hoopla about it, but there were so many things in that tax law that were about retirement accounts. The headlines was not that, right? It was in there if you read the articles, but a lot of it was like the age for this requirement went from 70 to 72 to 73. That was the headline. And there was a lot of other things in there, but this was one of the things that was in there. You could always do that, but they raised this cap and they've indexed to inflation. So, even beyond what that minimum is, if somebody wants to just take additional monies from their retirement account and say, hey, I was planning to give $50,000 to this charity, but I can take it from my IRA and not pay any tax on it, versus it's going to pass to my heirs and be taxable. If I take it for another purpose, it's going to be taxable. So, it's something we bring up with clients all the time because I have found very few people have ever heard of this. So I don't think a lot of people do know, the people that have these investments know that. And I always say, are you charitably inclined? And people say, well, I am. I said, well, maybe you should look at using this, versus the other money. Or if you want to do more, here's a place you could do it and it's going to benefit you tax wise.
Chris, would we find that language in that act?
Yeah. And I will send Michelle, I guess, after this. I have a couple of PDFs. I have one really good, just one pager that explains all the rules on it.
That would be great.
Well, it's called Congress.
What the maximums are. It was called the Secure Act 2.0. So they did a Secure Act about 5 years ago. And then last year they updated it and added things to it. But yeah, that's what the basis of this is. It's called the name of what that actually is. It's called a qualified charitable distribution from an IRA, a QCD is what it's called. But under that new act, it raised the limit to $100,000 a year that's indexed for inflation starting this year for what people can come in. And they have to, under this new law for this particular thing, that has to actually go direct to a charity. They can't take the money and put it in a foundation. They can't put it in a charitable remainder trust. They can't put it in a donor advised fund like a lot of folks do for other assets that eventually are going to a charity. This, it's actually, you guys are getting the cash now, right? It's not going somewhere and then distributed later. So that's the other nice thing on your side of it, is that the money has to be done that tax year and it has to go directly. So on my side, when a client's doing it, we get the information on the charity from the client. Who is it? What's the EIN number? How much are you sending? We actually send the check directly from their account directly to the charity, wherever they want it, or charities, that they want to do. And they don't have to take, their whole amount and do that, right? You can split it up. I mean, if their required distribution is $20,000 and they want to give 10,000 to a charity and take 10, they get taxed on 10 and the other 10 is tax free.
So what's as soon as they can do that? Is it age 70 and a half, or it could be even
they
sooner?
could start doing it if they want to do just a QCD, like meaning just use IRA money to go to a charity at 70 and a half. That's when you can first do it. Okay. You're required to start taking money under the new law at 73. So anybody older than 73 this year has to take some money out and do something with it. So you can start at 70 and a half if it's something you're just charitably minded, want to do it. At 73, the money's coming out and you have to decide, are you taking it? And if you are charitably minded, then I think it's a no-brainer to directly do it. So
Thank you.
Yep. Anybody else on any of that stuff? So one of the other things, I just got to find my I buried all my stuff here. This was another little interesting tidbit that I ran across about spending by category, this is through 2022, so it's pretty recent information. It's basically 2017 to 2022, so it encompasses COVID and all that. And this is mainly looking at 55 plus folks, which again, I think is a lot of the demographic down here, especially with wealth. So, they are increasing, again, the amount that they're wanting to give to charity as age increases goes up exponentially. So when we looked at the 55 to 64 demographic, they're taking about 5% of whatever their annual spending is. And right, we're talking about people $1 million plus net worth. So, their spend is six figures, right? About 5% on average is what's going to charity of some sort, but 75 plus, right? Once you hit 75 plus, that doubles. So the amount that they are wanting or annually giving to charity is going to over 8% a year, index for inflation, right? When you're looking at it over the course of years. And that's why I keep pointing this back to, I think that's a really great demographic down here for giving and letting these folks know that there's other ways they could give, probably from assets that they have that they're not thinking about. So the QCD, I think, is a huge thing. The other is, like I said, being sure you have some setup within your organization to be able to take non-cash donations, right? Which I know doesn't happen every day, but if you have the right donor, they may want to be able to give you stock, right? They may have worked at Next Era for 30 years and accumulated a huge amount of stock that if they sell it, they're going to have a huge capital gain liability. If they donate it directly to you, they have no capital gain liability and it's still a charitable deduction. So making sure your charities have the ability to take that, I think, is critical. If you aren't of a size where you think you want to do that or have the capability of staff to do that, then I think understanding what a donor advised fund is and being able to tell someone about that or point them in the right direction of somebody that can, I think would be important too, because that's something that, again, it's not something that happens every day for individual investors to come across and understand all these things, and if they're not having someone advising them on it, they don't know. And if the charities, if you guys aren't giving some of that information out, I think it gets lost and they don't even know that there's money that they probably would give, but they're sitting there thinking, oh, I have this stock. I'd love to give some of that money, but boy, it's going to kill me in taxes if I do it, if I sell it, right? So understanding these different avenues, especially for people that have some wealth, to be able to work with them outside of the usual, cash donations, I think is important. One of the other I found interesting things too, in some of these research studies that I looked over preparing for this was, when you look at the last 20 years, the amount of money that seems to be coming from employer-driven giving has gone down, meaning, companies a lot of times would do fundraisers internally, right? And they target a charity and obviously do a match. And that used to be such a huge thing. And now it seems most individuals aren't participating. It's not that they're not donating, but they're not participating in those because they're like, well, I don't want to give to XYZ just because my company that's who they chose. They want to choose their own value-based place to donate. So I think the way money's being sourced is very different today. And obviously you got crowdfunding and all these other avenues too, but people are really wanting to be able to say, instead of giving to this big global organization, I want to do something that's impactful in my community. And I found this charity or that charity, and that's who I'm giving to. But on your side, I want to make sure you guys have all the tools that can take the donations from people, right? And make it easy for them to donate to you and understand some of these things that are outside the normal realm of, paying with a credit card, sending a check or whatever, what have you. So I'm going to stop again if anyone has any questions on any of that.
Would you mind just going over what the donor advised fund is again?
Yeah, I'll get into more of that. So donor advised fund, we work with probably 5 or 6 different companies that have donor advised funds. So let's say somebody has some type of assets that have appreciated a lot, whether it's an individual stock or a mutual fund, or even it could be real estate or some sort of a private like stock option investment, things like that. So they've got this wealth and they're probably not touching it for themselves if they don't have to, because they all get terrified of taxes. Everybody gets terrified of taxes when you make money. So if they're not wanting or needing to use that money for themselves, they're not selling it because they don't want to generate the tax. And they could donate the stock, obviously, directly to a charity if a charity will accept it. So that's one avenue. But let's say they want to give money to a lot of different places, right? They don't just have one charity that they're wanting to take care of. Yeah, they could give a little stock to a bunch of places, but that's really hard to do. So a donor advised fund, it's almost like a mutual fund. If you're familiar with how mutual fund works, where, money goes in and it's diversified up into a lot of different investments. But instead of putting cash into it, you're actually taking your securities, whatever that is, donating it to the donor advised fund. It's being diversified. It doesn't need to be donated right away. Right. So like if they're just wanting to make that, they get the deduction when they donate it though. Okay. So if they're taking $100,000 and putting it in Apple stock into the donor advised fund, they're getting the deduction as if they gave it to the charity right now. It stays in that fund. It's able to grow and be diversified, but at any point they can choose to make grants out of the monies that they've donated and is then growing to whatever charities they want, as long as it's a 501c3, federally recognized charity. So, especially for a smaller organization that maybe doesn't have staff or doesn't have the ability to take stock, that's a great thing for people to understand, that there's other avenues that they can specify and donate. Hopefully that clarifies.
What's the minimum that one needs to open up a brokerage account in order to receive stock? Is it
not really anything? I mean, again, it varies by company. I'll just go with what we do. But just to open a brokerage account, we have it's like a $2,000 minimum, right? So I mean, you don't have to have a lot in there. Obviously there's no fees or anything on something like that if there's nothing even there. But yeah, so there's not really, you don't need to have someone come to you with $1 million, in stock to be able to do that. But again, I run across it a lot. One other little thing, you'll probably hear about this the next presentation, because a lot of times insurance is incorporated with it, but charitable remainder trust, that's another thing. And from my perspective, I've seen this from certain charitable organizations where I've gotten information from them about letting me know, hey, we can take money this way. Others I haven't. So I think it is great when you guys can put out that information to people about, legacy planning or other ways to give. But, charitable remainder trust, I'll just give a really quick overview of that. That's a way, again, of donating something that's appreciated. So whether it's a stock or some sort of investment asset that you're donating, but you're not wanting to let it go right now. Okay. Maybe it's more of a legacy plan. So that requires a little more involvement. You've got to have a legal document drawn up by an attorney to actually create a separate trust, but you're donating your stock, and then that no longer is a taxable event for you. So you've now donated it to this separate entity. And then it can be diversified very much like a donor advised fund. But with that, the client, the individual donating it, is able to take income the rest of their life out of the money. And then what's left goes to the charity upon their death. So, let's say you have $1 million of stock, you donate it now, right? You get your deduction. You no longer have a huge capital gain that's taxable. You can now diversify it out of whatever that was into maybe a better investment strategy. And depending on their age, they get a withdrawal every year. So now they've got money to live on that maybe they couldn't have generated before without selling the asset. And obviously the hope is that still continues to grow, but whatever that value is when they pass, then whatever charities they've designated in the trust, they get all that money. So these are all things that I think, would be a great, one pager, email, whatever you want to say to folks that donate, so they understand that there's other ways they can do it. Because again, if they don't have a good financial advisor, or they don't have a good tax planner, they don't even know this stuff exists. So sometimes coming from you, that's the only place they may hear it, so.
Chris, when you establish that the stock is transferred, somebody asked about how much money you have to have. You just have to have an account established with somebody like yourself.
Exactly.
It's really a pass through. The stock
Exactly.
is coming to you.
Yep.
And then the policy at JARC is that we sell the stock immediately.
Right.
We do not hold on to it.
Yes.
And then we get the cash distribution.
Exactly. So you don't really need to have an ongoing, account, so to speak. In the example, when I said, a couple $1,000 to start it, you start an account, obviously if there's never any money in there, it gets closed. But if you maintain some balance of cash or something in there, right, it'll stay open. And then if you need somebody that one day says, here's $50,000 of Johnson & Johnson or whatever, then it gets in there, we sell it, and you take the proceeds, because most charities, like you say, aren't going to sit on the stock unless it was some sort of restricted gift or something bizarre, but under normal circumstances, you want the money so you can do something with it. Right. All right. So, yeah. Any questions about anything I didn't talk about that has related to gifting or investing or anything like that?
So, Chris, I have a couple of questions actually,
Sure.
and you kind of mentioned crowdfunding for a second earlier, but
Yep.
I was curious, at least in regards to the clients that you're working with, how skilled are they in regards to digital philanthropy? So crowdfunding, online giving, because if the demographic is typically, 70s, they're not as comfortable with making donations through their phone or their website, but yet all the charities are sort of pushing
That's what everyone's
for
promoting.
paperless.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, kind of what are your thoughts in that regard?
I mean, I think the next generation is going to be very comfortable with it, right? But they're not the ones donating the large sums right now, you know? So I think you kind of have to have two strategies, right? You've got to have almost like your estate planning gifting strategy for the older folks that have accumulated the wealth, because the most of the wealth, you know, we're entering the phase right now in the world where the largest wealth transfer that's ever happened in human history is going to happen. So baby boomer generation is in retirement and continually retiring right now. You know, every year there's millions more, right? And that's the largest accumulation of wealth that's happened over their lifetimes. And all that money's going somewhere, right? Because yes, it's going to go to kids and relatives and all that, but some slice of that pie is going to charity, right? And how do you guys maximize that portion that's getting there? So that's why I think some of these strategies I talked about are so important for those folks. But then you've got the younger demographic that doesn't even know what a check is. Right. So, you know, they want to do everything on their phone. They, you know, Venmo and all of that. So you have to be ready for that too, even though you're probably not getting large donation. Maybe you are. I just wouldn't expect it that way. But down the road, that might be where you get your large donations, right? If through the crowdfunding, through the online payment portal, and being able to text, you know, give to XYZ number, right? So, I mean, you can't ignore that, because that's the generation that's coming up now, and that's what they're used to. But in the short run, the big wealth transfer is happening in that baby boomer demographic. And I think you've got to be able to understand that and get the share that is going somewhere.
And on that, I was just about to ask Marlene about cryptocurrency. That was the next thing on my list. So I'm glad we're on the same page. What are your thoughts as far as donor giving in the crypto space? And what are your thoughts as far as organizations being ready for crypto in the future? I know it's an interesting topic.
So I'll give my disclaimer first. I'm not allowed to recommend cryptocurrency in any way, shape, or form. The whole crypto thing is weird because, you know, on our end, we've not been able to really, I mean, they just came out with crypto funds that are traded on, you know, on stock exchanges within the last week. So that's the first time there's been anything like approved like that. But even still, like SEC has all these limitations on us even recommending that stuff. But that being said, it's there, right? And there's people that have money in it, and there's people that have a lot of money in it. And it probably behooves charities to look into ways of being able to take that, because again, think about somebody that, just like any other appreciated asset, whether it's a stock or real estate, there's people that have appreciated crypto, right? And they're going to have the same tax consequences down the road selling that, right? And then wanting to give it to a charity if they can donate it directly, which means you guys have to have a crypto wallet and all those types of things, which is separate from your brokerage account and your checking account and, you know, and your investment account and all the things that you already have. But there's money out there. There's a lot of money out there in crypto, and there's going to you know, we talk about it now in terms of estate planning. I mean, you have to consider that, because that's another asset, just like your retirement account and your life insurance and your stock. There's going to be people that retire with millions of dollars of crypto probably down the road. So, you know, I think it is important to probably look at that and have a way to be able to accept donations that way. I'm still not, the whole thing seems weird to me still. Maybe I'm too old, but you know, I always worry about the security of it all, but it's a real thing and there's money in there. And I think you got to be ready for that, you know.
And have you heard of any donor advised funds accepting crypto at this point?
Not
or
yet.
Is it no?
There's probably, I mean, I guarantee you someone somewhere out there probably has a crypto donor advised fund, but my concern there is until it becomes more mainstream, the vetting of that, just like what we've seen happen with these crypto firms that went belly up or were frauds and all that, I would be very concerned until you have like a real player in there, right? Like, you know, we have donor advised funds from Fidelity and Eaton Vance and, you know, established companies. But right now, everybody's been in everyone's had the same problem. They wouldn't be able to take crypto because of the SEC regulations weren't allowing these normal investment companies to deal in that. I think that's quickly going to shift now that we have these mainstream exchange traded funds that are tracking Bitcoin and things like that we never had before that have just come out in the last few weeks. I think it'll be a very quick shift to where you have, JP Morgan Chase and Ameriprise and, the established banking institutions actually involved in it, but we're not there yet.
And then for those of us who are trying to engage more with firms like Ameriprise, what are you seeing as sort of the level of interest as far as, obviously you want to gain clients and
Right.
we want to gain, whether it's
access to the clients,
access to the clients, but also, access to the people in companies like Ameriprise, like
Right.
access to people like you who
Yeah.
could be a board member, serve on
Mhm.
a committee, volunteer, become a donor yourself. What are
Sure.
you seeing as far as like the interest level of these companies?
I've not seen anything directed like that, right? And I mean, this has all just come up with us having discussions and being preparing for this. I mean, maybe it makes sense to have some sort of I don't want to call it a marketing event because that sounds bad, but but some sort of an event where you're I didn't even know this chamber existed until you told me about this, Michelle. Like, this is so awesome. I had no idea, right? I don't think anybody outside this realm would have known. But maybe you have some sort of a social event or something where you're inviting people that, again, maybe would be good more board members, maybe would be good centers of influence, whatever it is, to just come understand what you guys are doing. That's kind of where I would start. Everybody invites somebody, right? Type of a thing, because I've never seen any kind of outreach like that from charities directly, other than somebody you already know or involved with, or that kind of thing.
That's an interesting idea, actually. Marlene, we should talk about this. So any other questions from the group that we haven't touched on that you're itching to learn or just sort of get some guidance on before we let Chris go?
I did want to mention that on the crypto side, about a year ago decided that we wanted to be able to accept crypto, and there are these organizations that provide kind of an interface between organizations like us that don't have a crypto wallet or any kind of method of accepting crypto assets, and the potential crypto donors who will essentially convert crypto donations to cash, before it becomes your property. So that's another possibility if, as it turns out, in the year that we've made that change, we haven't received anything yet, but we are ready if anybody is able to, to gift us in cryptocurrencies.
Yeah. And I think it's important to have the option. I mean, obviously, I don't think most people are still thinking that way, of that's how they're paying for stuff. But I mean, you read the stories about, people bought cars in crypto and all kinds of things now. So it's becoming more prevalent. And I mean, even PayPal has crypto in there now, right? So there's a lot more mainstream financial organizations that now have the options for that. So I think, over time, it's probably a good option to just let people know. Again, I think all of this comes down to letting the people that you already know are giving you know all the different ways they can give, right? That's I think my overreaching thought for all of you.
So Michelle, just a quick question. I'm, kind of going back with what Greg talked about. I know, Greg, you said you have not received any crypto yet, but I'm curious, has anybody received cryptocurrency on this call? Yes,
Hi, Ruth. Yes, I received some. I gave a presentation at a golf tournament, and the focus there at this golf tournament was all about cryptocurrency. So, and I was there just to speak on behalf of the charity, and they were going to make a donation to me. So before I got up there, the gentleman said, "Hey, do you accept it?" I said, "Well, I don't know. We've done anything, but I'm sure we can." He said, "Well, pull out your phone." And he says, "Go to this app and click on this and whatever." So I have it. It's on my phone. So what happened was, he said, "Here, I'm going to send you some money." So he sent me $50. And then while I was speaking, they put up on the screen a QR code. And so I had my phone muted, but I had my watch on. and all of a sudden my watch just started blowing up and blowing up. And I said, oh my God, I said, you guys are all giving me money. And they did. So everybody in the audience was pumping money into this crypto thing. So now I have $600 and some on my phone that I told my CFO, I said, you got to get this crap off my phone. Like it's not even mine. Like we got to open something up. So yes, we have an account. It's got like $600 and it really fluctuates daily. So it goes up quite a bit. It goes down, but that's the only thing. So yes, we accept Bitcoin Cash here at HomeSafe.
Hey, this is Steve King at Both Helping Hands. I work with Greg Hazel. I mean, we set up an account through an entity called every.org. They limit the number of different types of coin they take. We did get one donation to kind of test it. But initially what it does, the money gets transferred to every.org and they liquidate it for you. And then you get a cash contribution. So there is a small transaction fee. It's almost like getting a credit card payment and you just get a cash payment. So I'm not dealing with trying to liquidate crypto. And you still get the information on the donor as well. So that's how we did it and what we used. But again, that was one donation and that's the last we've seen of it to date.
And then we're watching
it's out there, I guess.
And we're watching the documentary on HBO about crypto frauds.
Yes. Yep. There's a lot of that. That's the problem right now. You don't know if you're dealing with somebody in their basement or a legitimate company, and even the ones that were legitimate weren't really legitimate, right? That were holding some of the money. So you just got to be careful, which, I guess if you look at it the same way as any other asset that you'd be getting donated and treat it the same way, well, if you're getting Bitcoin or you're getting whatever and you don't want to hold it or whatever, then you're selling it and getting the cash just like you would with stock, then, there's not a huge amount of risk there, but yeah.
Any other questions or thoughts for Chris? Chris, thank you so much for taking a little bit of time with us today. If you're comfortable with it, I'd love to be able to share your information with the members of the nonprofit chamber. Should anyone want to connect with you and sort of follow up on maybe some strategies or what have you from the nonprofit perspective, that's okay with you?
Yep, that would be great. Yeah, anyone reach out with questions or anything, I'm more than happy to help.
Great. Thank you so much, Chris. It was so good to see you.
All right, good seeing you all. Thank you.
Thanks,
all
Chris.
Right. Thank you.
Thanks,
care.
Chris. Awesome. Thanks, Michelle. That was amazing. And thanks again to Chris. If he's still on, really informative. So yeah, just a couple of quick reminders. So the next meeting is February 15th. It will be at 3 o'clock. It will cover insurance. And we are working on finding a in-person location. So Marlene will be, sending out that information to us in the coming weeks. And also just wanted to hear from you guys, like if there's anything, like any burning issues or subjects that you would like to hear more about in, as far as content in the coming meetings. We'd love to hear from you if anyone has anything.
I have a semi-burning issue, not exactly burning, but one of our employees is pregnant, and I'm wondering among the other nonprofits, how much maternity leave do you give? I know the state has been very generous in awarding many more days and weeks than we ever could, but I'm wondering how, is it 2 weeks? Is it 1 week? We started at 1 week. I feel that's really not very much. So I'm just wondering what else.
Are you referring to paid time off maternity leave?
Yes.
We allow.
And this is for paternity leave as well, not to be discriminatory.
They're accumulated sick time and vacation time, and then they qualify for short-term and long-term disability. And I believe the law requires they can go on FMLA for 60 days.
But as a small organization, we don't really qualify for FMLA. You have to have 50 employees or more, I believe. I could be wrong.
No, that's true, Connie. But that just means FMLA doesn't really, that just means that you don't have to adhere to it, but you could still use that as a guideline, right? If you were seeking to do something that you're doing voluntarily. And we do the same thing. So it doesn't really mean paternity leave, right? Because it's our primary solution is short-term disability. So again, sick leave and so on. It doesn't really address the equity issue. And we do qualify for FMLA. So someone could take that off if they qualify, but they wouldn't necessarily have associated time off unless they had earned it, unfortunately.
What it allows them to do, particularly when they start to qualify for the disability, they can utilize, like if the disability pays, say 60%, then they can take their vacation and sick leave to bring them up to 100% and extend that time out to maintain a full paycheck.
Right, because FMLA doesn't mean funding. FMLA just means that their job is guaranteed for a certain period of time. And yes, it is for organizations that are 50 employees or greater.
But you can have a policy that simply states we would follow these guidelines, et cetera.
And Connie, I'm not a good example for you because we're healthy mothers, healthy babies. So, but I will say, only because we're so excited about it, we did just in 2023, the board approved a fully paid paternal leave. So they can take, obviously with FMLA, you could take up to 12 weeks, but for the mother, it would be completely paid. So they would utilize their PTO and whatever time they have accrued, but the remainder we would pay in full. And then for the father, it would be up to 4 weeks. So, but I would recommend if you're trying to just put together a policy, just speaking on behalf of pregnant women, the standard is at least 6 weeks that they're getting. That's kind of typically what mom would most benefit from, even though that's not nearly enough time. But just from the pregnant woman perspective, 6 weeks seems to be a standard that we hear about. Again, I don't agree that it's enough time, but 6 weeks typically is a standard.
Congratulations.
But obviously following FMLA to be up to 12 weeks.
Congratulations to you on that. Very nice.
It was 38 years in the making, that one. So we're very excited about it.
Thanks, Connie. And anyone else have any issue questions or ideas for future membership meetings?
It's not really an idea for a future meeting, and I already emailed you about it, Matt. And I know there have been some conversations, but I am really concerned about the nonprofits first shift to annual shift away from every 4-year accreditation and to an annual review, especially since that it includes finance review every single year with everything else we've got going on. It just seems like the funders and accrediting bodies are just adding more and more and more to our plate every year without increased funding to support that. So I'm going to throw that out to everybody because let me share this. In the question and answer session that just came up, my staff person asked about that and asked, were the members surveyed? Was this piloted? And they said, wow, you're the very first person to express any concern about this at all. From what we've heard so far, people seem excited. That's not what anybody's suggested to me. So I think that if we're not excited, we're going to have to be a little more clear about that.
So, can I ask a question? Because I sat in on that nonprofits first meeting, but I wasn't totally listening. I'm going to be honest about that. so the fiscal part is every year because we're assigned to fiscal for the first year, but you're saying fiscal is going to be every year and it's a full fiscal?
No, it's not a full fiscal. So I haven't looked into it enough to really understand. What they're saying is that it will be the same amount of work, just broken up over 4 years. But my experience is that anybody saying that it usually is not it doesn't end up being accurate over time, because what happens is every time someone comes in, they're going to ask for stuff, right? They've got a list of stuff. So my worry is it's not going to be less work, and we have to address it every year. And there is a fiscal review every year. I don't know exactly how involved it is. They said it's going to be less than the 4-year cycle one.
So it's interesting because for me, my understanding was the same. And I know we've talked about this in different forums, but that it was going to be in depth in one area. So I'm actually surprised, because that's something I want to look at, that the fiscal is something that we will be doing every year, even if it's less, because so yeah.
Yeah.
I think you need to check that, because that wasn't my understanding.
Yeah, to me, anything every year is more work than once every 4 years, because you have to turn your attention to it. So for us, we have literally 3 overlapping accreditations this spring.
Thanks, Sharon. And yeah, we've heard from a few other members about that as well. So been working with Marlene and in talking about next steps and trying to get some things scheduled to learn as much as we can. But thanks for bringing that up.
I have one that I'd like to bring up, audits, how to prep for an audit, general things like that would be nice to learn about.
Like program audits, right, Michelle? Like,
yeah, just the whole, yes.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, guys. Marlene, do you have anything to add, or?
Just that for February, as Matt said, we're looking for, and we'd like to get a centrally located nonprofit if you have space, because we want to do the next meeting in person. So drop me an email if you have any suggestions.
Great. All right. Well, look forward to seeing everyone in February. Have a great rest of the week and weekend. Great to see everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Marlene. I just saw your message.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Matt.
any day but February 15th. Because we have a big fundraising event, but we're happy to host it here.
Okay, so we could look at like March or April, or
Yes.
Awesome. I would love to. That would be cool.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you for the great meeting. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye.